It was once written off as the great American desert. Today, it's the breadbasket of the nation. From a desolate corner of Texas, over parts of at least 10 U.S. states, right up to the Canadian border, the Great Plains cuts across some of the most amazing landscapes in America. Prairies, where wild bison still roam. Fertile fields, first planted by America's pioneers. And rugged badlands, with fascinating fossils of the prehistoric creatures that once called North America home. It's a land with rich stories that tell of the birth of the West. From Native American legends of how a towering column of rock was scratched into existence by a bear, to a town called Deadwood, whose streets are rich with stories of gold fever, to dazzling cities that transformed the frontier and helped give birth to the American cowboy. It has staggering wealth, deep underground, and seemingly endless riches above. But those who live here know well that life on the Great Plains can be unforgiving. Here in Tornado Alley, terrifying twisters ravage entire towns, and devastating droughts can turn miles of green into bowls of dust. It all happens under the wide open skies of the Great Plains, where an aviation pioneer launched his now famous biplane. A legendary aviatrix was born, and where thousands of nature's winged creatures flock every year. A famous author once called its vast open spaces not a country at all, but the material out of which countries are. But in fact, this is a dried lake bed covered with salt. It's known as Oklahoma's Great Salt Plains. In 1811, it was one of the fabled wonders of the West, which is why U.S. Major George C. Sibley asked a group of Osage Indians to take him here. The Osage had long come here to hunt, since animals often used the lake as a giant salt lick. Sibley was one of the first European Americans to see the Great Plains, and later wrote that the white expanse before him looked like a brilliant field of snow. But knowing it was salt, he called it the Grand Saline. What Sibley couldn't have known at the time was that this strange otherworldly landscape is actually fascinating evidence of how the Great Plains was born. It's a story that begins 95 million years ago, when most of the middle area of North America was covered by a vast inland sea known as the Western Interior Seaway. To the east was a landmass geologists have named Appalachia, and to the west, another they call Laramidia. In between and underwater was all of the region that's now the Great Plains. It was roughly 70 million years ago that this inland sea started to disappear. Continental plates that form the Earth's crust collided and started pushing up the Earth. It was that uplift that created the Rocky Mountains. As the Rockies rose, they pulled up the land to the east with them and caused the ocean to drain away. What was once the bed of the sea rose out of the water, and the Great Plains was born. Today, stunning forms suddenly rise from the land in western Kansas. They're known as Monument Rocks. This white limestone, or chalk, was created from sediment in the sea and the bones of primeval sea creatures over millions of years. They are soft to the touch and slowly vanishing, crumbling away with the prairie winds and rain. There is so much chalk in the Kansas soil that all you have to do is scratch the surface to find it. It's what turns the long, straight country roads of this state bright white. And it's what inspired the famous chant, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, sung by fans of the University of Kansas Jayhawk sports teams. As the Rockies rose, rivers and streams started running down and out of the mountains. Scientists estimate that half the original mass of the Rocky Mountains ended up being washed onto the Great Plains. It's easy to be convinced that the Great Plains is a flat region, especially when you fly over a Nebraska cornfield. But in fact, it starts out at an elevation of nearly 6,000 feet in the west, at the base of the Rockies, and drops down to just 1,500 feet on its eastern fringe, along the Missouri border. Over millennia, the carbon-rich vegetation on which the creatures of the Great Plains thrived was compacted under layer after layer of earth. It created the vast deposits of coal that now lie under the northern Great Plains, and that many Americans rely on today to keep their lights on. This is the Black Thunder Coal Mine in Wyoming. It's also home to one of the biggest machines on the planet. It's known as Ursa Major, or Big Bear. This monster dragline excavator weighs more than 6,700 tons and is armed with a 360-foot-long boom. It takes just one operator to swing its enormous bucket, scrape it across the earth, and move up to 160 cubic yards of dirt in a single pass, enough to fill 2 swimming pools. In just minutes, it rips through layers of earth that took millions of years to form. Mining companies first have to get rid of this overburden so they can access the valuable dark veins of coal deep below. In 2012 alone, the nearby North Antelope Rochelle mine removed 100 million tons of coal from the earth, which made it the biggest coal mine in the nation. Coal couldn't be mined on this scale at this speed without a fleet of machines like Ursa Major. But the carbon wealth under the Great Plains isn't limited to coal. Take a look at a satellite image of the night sky over Williston, North Dakota, and you can see what looks like the cluster of lights of a major city. In fact, these are the flares of fracking wells that have been driving a new boom in American oil and natural gas. That boom later went bust due to low oil prices, but it's touched just about every corner of the Great Plains, from here in North Dakota, across the prairies of Oklahoma, where bison share the range with pumpjacks, to the vast oil fields of the Permian Basin in Texas. But long before miners and oil companies were tapping treasures deep under the Great Plains, others here made staggering fortunes from the tens of millions of creatures that called its grasslands home. Hunters with up to 400 pounds of meat. It's why for thousands of years, Plains tribes gathered for seasonal bison hunts. One of the places they did it was here, at what's now known as First Peoples Buffalo Jump State Park in Montana. From miles away, hunters from the Blackfeet tribe guided herds of wild bison into a drive lane they had built from piled rocks and brush. It led right up to a cliff. When the cornered animals finally got there, they had no choice but to jump over the edge. Down below, more hunters were ready to finish off the injured animals with clubs, spears, and arrows. Native Americans used just about every part of the bison they killed. Dried meat helped sustain them during the long, cold winters on the plains. Bones became tools, and the animal's skin, clothing, and shelter. But the age-old hunting practices of the tribes were transformed in the 17th century by the arrival of the horse. Prehistoric horses once inhabited the plains, but eventually died out. It was the Spanish who reintroduced horses here in the 1600s. They brought them up from the south through what's now Mexico. Many Native American tribes, including the Comanche, Kiowa, and Cheyenne, mastered horse riding almost overnight. Suddenly, they could travel much longer distances, launch devastating raids on other tribes, and track and hunt bison with greater ease than ever before. Soon, Native Americans from outside the plains poured into the region to take part in the hunt and to trade the meat, hides, and bones of the creatures they killed. In doing so, they created one of the most legendary hunting cultures in history. The most famous of those traders was a man named John Jacob Astor. In 1828, Astor's American Fur Company established a trading post here at Fort Union, near where the Missouri and Yellowstone rivers meet in what's now North Dakota. It became a key hub in a vast network of forts, suppliers, traders, and exporters that stretched across the northern plains. Here at Fort Union, which has since been reconstructed, Astor's men traded with members of the Ojibwe, Blackfeet, Crow, and Cree, among others. They bought as many beaver pelts as they could to ship off to Europe, where they were turned into stylish hats, including top hats, which were the height of fashion at the time. The land that the Great Plains covers is so vast, it's virtually impossible to say exactly where the boundaries of this region start and end. Over the years, geologists, historians, and others have created at least 50 different maps of the Great Plains region. But in 2003, a geography professor named David Wishart had to come up with a single map for a first-ever encyclopedia of the Great Plains. At the southernmost edge of the Great Plains is the Rio Grande River, along the Texas-Mexico border. To the west, the boundary follows the base of the Rocky Mountains north, up past Denver, Colorado. The northern part of the Great Plains stretches across Wyoming and Montana, deep into Canada. While in the U.S., its eastern boundary is usually defined as the borders of the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Kansas, and then cuts back across Oklahoma and Texas. The Great Plains covers all or parts of 10 U.S. states and a vast area of more than 500 million square miles of land in the U.S. alone. It's easy to see why it's called America's Heartland. During the first half of the 19th century, the only sight on the horizon here would have been smoke wafting up from Native American villages, or the covered wagons of settlers crossing the prairie. Reports of rich farmland in Oregon and gold in California in the 1840s and 50s caused a flood of Americans to travel west. But to get there by land, they had to endure a long and arduous trek across the Great Plains. As more and more settlers started to make that journey starting in the 1840s, the routes they forged became the famous Oregon, California, and Mormon trails. And they all converged here in the Platte River Valley of what's now Nebraska. Thousands of adventurers, immigrant families, religious exiles, hopeful prospectors, and others turned this valley into a superhighway of its day. More than a century and a half later is the vast territory their ancestors once called home. Lands that include some of the greatest natural treasures of the Great Plains. One of those treasures is this, a giant rock column that shoots more than 1,000 feet from the land right up into the sky. The Sioux and other tribes call this massive rock form Matotipila, which means Bear Lodge. According to Native American legends, a giant bear created the tower's distinctive vertical scars by scratching it with its claws. But when Colonel Richard Dodge led a U.S. government expedition here in 1875, a translator in the group misinterpreted the Indian name to mean Devil's Tower. Dodge reported that the site was one of the most remarkable peaks in this or any country. His description helped convince President Theodore Roosevelt to make Devil's Tower the first national monument in America in 1906. Native Americans have been lobbying to have its official name changed to Bear Lodge ever since. Dodge and his party never made it to the top of the tower. The group's head geologist, Henry Newton, wrote that the summit was so hard to reach, it was, he said, inaccessible to anything without wings. Today, it's possible to fly right over the top of this stunning national monument and look down on a place where early travelers in the Great Plains were unable to tread. Just a few decades after Dodge arrived here, a wide range of exciting new aircraft took to the skies over the Great Plains and turned a former Kansas cow town into a world capital of aviation. In the 1920s, a new kind of machine appeared high over the prairies of the Great Plains. A now legendary aviation pioneer named Lloyd Stearman took to the skies over Kansas in his new biplane. He wasn't the first aviator here, but he went on to become one of the most famous after selling his company to Boeing in 1929. Stearman's planes still fly over Kansas today, just as they do all across the country. But these days, they're joined by some of the most modern aircraft in the world, which is one reason that the Kansas city of Wichita is now known as Air Capital City. It was here that Clyde Cessna opened his business in 1927 and started making the simple and safe private aircraft that most new pilots train in today. It was also here that his former business partner and rival, Walter Beech, launched Beechcraft, and where William P. Lear set up shop in 1963 to produce Learjets that now rocket all around the world. A single Learjet costs well over $12 million. But the wide open skies of the Great Plains didn't just lure inventors of aircraft. They also inspired many here to learn to fly, including a young Kansas woman named Amelia Earhart, who grew up in this white Victorian house high up on the banks of the Missouri River. Nearby lies a tribute to Earhart. It's a massive earthwork sculpture by Kansas artist Stan Hurd that is best seen from the air. It honors the first woman to pilot a plane across the Atlantic and one who tried to become the first female pilot to fly around the world. It was during that flight on July 2, 1937, that Earhart's plane disappeared off Papua New Guinea and has never been found. Earhart got a chance to experience the thrill of flight throughout the world, just as pilots do across the Great Plains today. As they look down on farmers hard at work transforming the land, and discover the seemingly endless natural wonders of the Great Plains states, like the hoodoos of the Palo Duro Canyon of Texas, and the wildlife that call the Great Plains home, like these pronghorn on the move in eastern New Mexico. But there's nothing like sharing the skies with the birds that make their epic annual migrations every autumn across the Great Plains. Their journeys take them from the northern states and Canada down to the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. And then back again come spring. There's one place in the Great Plains where most of these migrating birds stop to rest. It's here at Cheyenne Bottoms near Great Bend, Kansas. It's the nation's largest inland marsh, covering more than 60 square miles. Hundreds of species gather here, including 27 different kinds of ducks. Flocks of pelicans also stop off at Cheyenne Bottoms on their long flights between Central America and the Arctic. Scientists estimate that nearly half of all North American shorebirds visit this one marsh every year. They are part of the surprising wonder of the Great Plains. There's nothing like discovering America's heartland from the air. And the fascinating, rugged, bountiful, and dazzlingly beautiful states that belong to the Great Plains.